Welcome to the Business of Sound. On today's episode, we have a special guest, one of my favorite creators at Pure Glassbox, Jerry Kolber. Jerry's a co-creator of Who Smarted, and in his past life, which he's going to speak about today, he was also a producer and one of the co-creators of Brain Games. Previous to that as well, or maybe simultaneous to that, he has also produced such stellar shows as Queer Eye, in addition to Inked. So excited to have Jerry today, and then we have a great conversation.
Great to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, I guess one question I have just to kind of kick off the conversation is, why did you decide to transition into podcasting from TV? Or is that even the right way to frame it?
Sure, I would refer to it a little bit better. I'd say we've actually added podcasting to our television work. So, for the first decade of the Tom's existence, we were really strictly a streaming and television company working with National Geographic, Discovery, companies like that. All of our shows are science and education based. So when the pandemic hit, we couldn't really shoot anything because all of our shows involved volunteers, and it was just very unsafe, impossible to shoot. And so the show that we done just before that happened was a show called Brainchild, and work that we did for Netflix. When it was a children's science series, a 13-episode show that taught kids about everything from science to psychology. And we kept saying, well, we'll make a great podcast. But the TV producers never really stopped and to take the time to look into to make the podcast. Suddenly we had the gift of time, That's in the first 2020. And so we thought, we have this amazing team of writers and producers. We have this idea, and let's launch Who Smarted, but then see how it goes. And it was the perfect show for the time because it helped kids get off screens. It helped give parents a break and let the kids do something educational. And then it just blew up, and it kept growing even after all the COVID, the restrictions ended. And we loved doing it so much. It's so different than television, because with television, you have no direct relationship with the audience. You make your shuttle. The network does an amazing job marketing it and distributing it. And with podcasting, we're just getting this incredible feedback directly from parents and kids. And we're hearing from everyone with an impact was up on that, and being able to actually engage in the audience was something we'd never experienced. And it was absolutely like a life-changing in terms of our experience of making the show.
So just for the benefit of the audience, almost like a recap, Atomic Entertainment is the holding company.
Yes.
And literally your first foray to podcasting was Who Smarted.
That's correct.
Which is a smash hit for anyone wondering.
But yeah, so we really pride ourselves on making great shows. And we looked at the landscape of kids podcasting. We were thinking about it because, always went, we don't want to do something someone else already doing. And there's some great kids shows out there, but nobody was doing like a really short 15-minute, fun, narrative-driven science and stream podcast. And so that was always what we wanted to do. And I think we sort of hit the magic kind of intersection of making a great show that filled a need. And that need was car rides, bedtime, morning, a little morning break of waking for school. A show that could fit into the family's lives, right? You didn't have to sit down for an hour and make time for it, but you could squeeze the star show on your school.
We were podcasting.
So, yeah.
And anywhere, lean in, lean back, you name it. I think I know the answer to this question, maybe, but I would love to hear how your TV experience has helped you and your team develop this podcast and work on.
Sure, absolutely. That's a great question. We think of Who Smarted as television without the screen. And so, what a lot of people actually tell us that when they listen to it, they feel like their kids feel like they're listening to a cartoon that just doesn't have pictures. And so, our sound designer Josh Hahn does an amazing job of bringing that to life and sound effects, the worldscapes, world building, and then also in terms of the narrative, we just have so much experience and great stories, and our writers and actors have such great experience bringing it to life. So. I think a lot of what we know about TV has this come to play. I think if we didn't have that background, we would maybe the show wouldn't have been as lushly produced with audio. But yeah, I think that's really informative.
The skill set translates well. I can't say I'm surprised to hear that. Yeah. Okay, so obviously this is a smash hit show. It's growing like a weed. We're obviously enthusiastic to be your partner in the business with you. But do you see an opportunity for adaptations? And if so, what kind?
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely see that Who Smarted for sure will become an animated series of Flea. And I think one of the things that was really interesting to us about Glassbox we were speaking to you was how much you think about that up front, both about whether there's existing IP to be created on the show, or thinking about future projects and really thinking about that. We think podcasts, it's okay as the podcast itself is big enough that it doesn't necessarily need an adaptation. But some of those bigger podcasts and some of the more medium-sized ones can become incredible, almost the farm teams for other IP, whether that's books, animated shows, TV shows. So with Who's Smart, I'm very bullish on that.
As are we. Yeah. It's like just one trend I wanted to ask you about, just to kind of piggyback on that comment, would be, how do you see media companies, both big and small, approaching adaptations within podcasting? Do you think this is an accelerate, or where do you see the trend?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's one we're very active in, because we actually have tried to develop a couple of podcasts for Nope. And one of the challenges is that the podcast, what is it that makes podcasting work is that it's in a relationship between the host and the audience. And so you have to keep that in mind when you're adapting for TV, that you're not going to have that for television. So the podcast adaptation has to be the DNA of the podcast, but actually something very different for TV. Because TV, you have in visuals, so you have to obviously go out and be much bigger. And so the thing that makes podcasting work so well, which is that it's the relationship of the host walking you through a story. I mean, it's almost the opposite of what makes a television show work. Mm-hmm. And so, don't try to say that the adaptations are possible, but you really have to think through how to take the DNA of broadcast and make it work for television, totally different medium.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Just one other question that I have, and certainly I imagine the audience might have, is how do you create content that is meant to be consumed by kids, but also families as well?
Sure.
Yeah. When you think of podcasting, you think of VR, you think of a lot of different things, a lot of different formats. So I want to know how you tackle this and how you navigate maybe unique challenges and obviously also incredible opportunities.
Yeah, it's another great question. I think Atomic, I can only speak from our experience.
Of course.
I think we are, people think of our shows very specifically, the shows that are family friendly, meaning that parents will get a lot out of them, grandparents, but also kids. That was true for Randy at Geo, The Brainchild, all the shows we do. And our secret sauce is that no matter who we're making the show for, whether it's targeted adults or targeted kids, and we try to speak to everyone as adults. And so Who's Smarted never sound like a kid show. We don't, and that's not to say that shows doesn't sound that way as anything. So it's a judgment on that. But for us, we speak to the kids as adults. That means that obviously the content barriers are very cool, very kid safe. But we treat the kids as if they're aspiring to be smart teenagers, sharper young adults. And so that does two things. Number one is it makes the kids feel really seen and really heard, that they want to be thick and bigger and they don't want to be spoken to as kids all the time. And then it also makes the content really friendly to brands, and because we're speaking in a language that the parents are comfortable with. We also always throw in jokes for all of that. So and parents always catch that. It's nothing it's all kids say stuff, but it's the cultural reference. It's sure it's really it's my bad. Just to keep on that. But
I hear that, because I can imagine this content is consumed by the family.
Yeah.
So that's definitely important. Yeah. When you started this show, obviously you need place and time, the pandemic, which anyone you ask may or may not be over. Did you expect this to be this successful so quickly?
Oh, no, absolutely not. No, we actually, so for us, Who's Smarted was a sort of, because it was a side project, just helpful parents and families during the pandemic. We knew so little about podcasting that it wasn't until a friend who has done some pretty big podcast looked at our numbers and said, you guys actually have a pre-made show, you have a real thing here. And so we did not initially get into this to make and really manufacture his show. Sure. We were just trying to be helpful and impact. And then once we saw that it was, and it kept growing and growing, that's the way we're like, oh, this could actually be really cool business as well. This being a really impactful show.
That's amazing. It starts somewhere.
Yeah.
So I have a random question. If I'm wondering about it, I'm sure the audience would also find this interesting. My team members have told me that you're a collaborator more than once with Pharrell Williams. Could you speak to that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So we were introduced to Pharrell about a decade ago. And he was really interested in, he just had a hit song, Happy, that was really popular with kids. And he had his son was in that age range, of like 8 or 9 year olds in time. And he was really interested in helping expand a STEM education for kids, because it's a real problem in the United States, particularly, that we don't talk about it a lot. We don't make it fun. And so we had just finished doing Great Things for Nangito, and we were starting to develop a show called Brainchild for Ashes, Nickelodeon originally. And we talked to Pharrell about it. We met him one day with Fernando Pitsovo, and ended up like hanging out for like 2 or 3 hours with him, just like talking about assignments and education and all this. And literally we all have like, we killed me. They had to go some church, and I was like, dude, you gotta go, man. It's gonna be late. And it was just like a real meeting of the minds, and of like what kind of impact it had, and how just also how we all think about creating and the content. Sure. And so he ended up coming as a producer with us on Brainchild. He really helped get the show made. Actually imaged the show. And then he supported, and then we've gone on to do a few projects with him since then as well. It's exciting. Yeah, he's great. And we absolutely love working with him. And his creative director, V.E. Valdez, has also just become a really close friend and collaborator. So it's amazing. Yeah.
So you may not know this. I'm waiting to. I don't know. We actually have something in common in terms of development and even distribution. Basically, I think the partner of Dog Whisper Productions. And one of our biggest partners, at least for U.S. broadcasts, was Nat Geo.
Yes.
So you have a long collaboration with them.
Yeah.
What's your viewpoint on not only working with Nat Geo, but maybe working with them since they've been acquired by this?
Yeah, so we had a great experience working with them on Brain Games. It was a very show for them, in that it was at the time it was rare for Nat Geo to have a show that wasn't voiceover driven. They were just to do some reality stuff. And Brain Games was a show that was like literally addressed to the audience, and it was much more of a pop culture show that Cheryl did, but they got incredibly behind it with their marketing. And people always say like, wow, how do you get have it ahead TV? Like, one of the answers is you made a great show, but the other half of that answer is the network has to get behind it. Sure, okay. If you don't have the marketing, you can have an amazing show, then that doesn't go anywhere. And so they were a great collaborator in terms of production of the show, marketing the show. We did like 7 seasons of Brain Games. We've not actually worked with them since they were acquired by Disney, but we would totally work with them. They're a great company to work with.
Never say never.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Jerry, obviously you could have worked with a lot of different podcast partners. Why didn't you choose Glass Ox, both in terms of, let's say, monetization and marketing?
Sure. So we have talked to a lot of different companies about working on Who's Smart and other shows. What really impressed us about you guys was that you were talking about us as creators and collaborators, meaning even from the very beginning, you're talking about developing other shows. Also, you guys are a very high-touch organization, being that we feel like we're sticking to be decision makers. And even if you're not necessarily available, some response to us very quickly. There was also the sense, even before we signed up with you, there was talk about plans and like really granular details. A lot of companies will make a proposal to you and you can tell like it's just a template, and they've basically come into the insert. And it really felt like you guys were understanding what we were doing with Who's Smarted, but also thinking about what we wanted to do outside Who's Smarted. And your deal was very fair. And we also really liked meeting you guys and hanging out with you, which goes a long way with us. So, honestly, that's a huge piece of it.
I'm glad to hear that. And, one other thing I wanted to share too is that as we've onboarded your show and tried to both in terms of marketing and monetization, I can't say we're surprised, but we've had an incredibly positive response from brands. And they let us know that it's very difficult to market to families and kids, so they're careful as they should be. And more oftentimes they decline rather than move forward. I want to know, basically, in your opinion, why has your team, and the Who's Smart show in particular, been successful in making brands feel comfortable with working with you?
That's a great question. So, and I think that speaks to just the fact that we've been doing co-viewing on 4 Quadrant Entertainment for the last 15 years and making actually some of the most successful iterations of that, both for Netflix, for HBO. We've also done it a lot with brands. So we've done, I should talk as much about this, but we've done a lot of branded work for companies like General Electric, IBM, Topgolf, Spotify. Let me work with a lot of these places that are looking for family co-viewing branded or unique content. And so we've just been doing it for so long that we've gotten really good at it. But I think there's also just an element like how we think about and telling stories is like we want parents to feel comfortable bringing their kids to learn about something even and have a conversation start. We never want our content for the family-friendly content to be something where a parent ever has to feel uncomfortable or awkward. So really just think about like, it's not so much about brand safety, but it's about what would we want with like parents or aunts or uncles, like sitting down with a 6, 8, or 9-year-old kid. What would we want to see? And what would we want them to see? And that's the culture we look through. And I think that just makes great shows, and it also makes it very friendly for brands as well, because it's safe, family friendly.
I tend to agree with you. You know, one comment I guess I'd have is this. You know, I'm definitely aware of the Tommy's ability to do custom content, unique content, branded content for the world's biggest brands. But I did want to know if you think Smart in particular could be a platform for creating unique content or partnerships with brands under the right circumstances. And if so, how would you see that work?
Sure. We've actually died. And so the answer is yes. I'm not the other two that will be part about this, but we did we have an advertiser, Mel Science, that we work with a lot, and Mel makes these amazing monthly science kits for kids that are subscription-based. Obviously, you get a little science lab delivered to your home every month. And so our audience of kids loves Mel Science and what they have to offer. And so we actually did an episode that was built around Mel Science's Infinity kit, and we based it around Thanos and the Marvel Universe. But with our trusting NA at the heart of it, having this kit delivered, and man, it's one of the most organic brand integration that I've ever done. These are just made total theater. But it also came from a clear desire of the brand is to be a bigger part of our show, and our willingness to say, yeah, we're going to write units in an episode and make it work. So for us, the show can absolutely be a platform for red brands and red products. And then our families that listen, or Swarty families, we call them, respond very favorably to that. They feel like they're being advertised to because we're actually telling a story and creating an educational opportunity around the brand. So
I guess that's the skill or the science to it, if you will. You have to integrate them successfully. That makes sense. Yeah, I felt like working.
It is. Yeah, we'd love to be more of a part.
As a way, that's a bit. Yeah, we're on the same page. Jerry, thanks so much for coming in today. Really appreciate your time and, of course, your partnership. And I think the episode went really well. Hopefully the audience agrees.
Yeah, but thank you. We're so happy to be working with you guys, the whole Glassbox team, and you can check out WhoSmartin at WhoSmartin.com or on any podcast player.
That's right. Feel free to subscribe on Spotify, Apple, you name it. And if anyone out there is listening and they want to learn a little bit more about WhoSmarted, you might be a media buyer, you might be a brand. We'd be happy to have a conversation with you too at Glassbox. As always, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again next week.